Good morning. Um, so when I signed up for this panel discussion, I think day before yesterday, I was just wondering what should be the flow of this discussion, because day one was so rich with insights, and day one was full of insights from speakers and a range of speakers across the spectrum. So we wanted to keep this panel a little free flowing as a result of day one's insights and discussions that came on board. So I'd like to invite my panel members here, starting with Suruchi Biani, who's the marketing manager for Uber India, Darwin Gosal, founder and CEO of CryoVex, and Kenny Ong. Great speech from Kenny, so needs no introduction. Fantastic speech. Oops. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Right. So, a bit of introduction about myself for those who were not present yesterday. My name is Kaushik. I head up the business for Indonesia and Singapore within the downstream business within Shell. And the last 24 hours has been very enriching for me, primarily because as a traditional energy player, we are making investments in sort of energy transition, and as a result of that, Shell Ventures is a business within Shell where we are investing in a lot of tech startups, and data remains fundamental. So I couldn't agree more when many speakers spoke about data is the new oil. Actually, data and insights is the new oil, and as globally we in the energy industry make efforts to move into this energy transition, it's very useful to actually figure out what the industry is talking about, data and insights and technologies, so that we can bring some sort of fresh thinking into the organization. So on that note, I wanted to, so there are 4 key themes in this panel discussion which I would like to bring forth. So the first is importance of new technology to distill insights from the various data sets. We're going to talk about actual working examples and hear from our panel members in terms of what has gone well and what are the learnings from events or technologies that could be improved. So starting with Suruchi.
Sure.
Ready for the mic.
Hello. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. So I think there is no doubt that we need to keep deploying new technology, disruptive technology, to kind of keep unlocking value in terms of and getting new insights. And I think it'll be a little bit unfair to just talk about insights without talking about business. And like Kenny also pointed out, it's important to kind of keep a sight of business model, profitability, all of that when we talk about insights. From the perspective of Uber, I think there are a lot of different problems that we're confronted with on an everyday basis, starting with marketplace, which is demand and supply in the physical world, the condition of the cars, driver experiences, rider experiences, eater experiences, courier experiences. So a whole range of problems that we are confronted with on an everyday basis. And all of these problems need a different solution. In the spectrum of technology, I think it could range from an extremely savvy technological innovation when it comes to riders, because our riders and eaters are slightly more sophisticated, more evolved, more rarefied, whereas our driver partners are, especially in India, I spoke about it yesterday, the difference between the front seat and the back seat is quite enormous. So we need to use much more basic kind of, if not technology, much more basic methodologies to kind of glean insights from there. So I think in this spectrum, we use a range of technologies, and I think they have to be in tune, A, with the latest technology in the world, but also how consumers have actually adopted that technology. So it'll be tech first, then consumer, customer first, and then market research is also needs to kind of keep adapting to both these. So it's really a range of technological innovations that we use for a lot different problems.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Suruchi.
For us, I think technology-wise, there are two market insights. There are fundamentally two sets. The first one is more basic, which is we have tools to do a lot of, because of we work with artists, so we have a lot of tools that actually do a lot of social media listening. So we have tools that are plugged into Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, WeChat, all this, and to understand what fans are saying, what fans want, all these things, and then listening to, for example, we have tools that latch on to ticket selling sites and things like this. So whether people are buying tickets to a show or not. So we have all these tools that are on a very basic level. So that is one thing that we do. The other one is more proprietary, where we then attach our tools to the platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and things like this. So then we draw those numbers like what most of us will do. So we then match these two and then create a strategy from that. So two sides to it. But I think for us, the one that really works, like I said, the one that from social media, I think that's the one that is very interesting, where you can read comments and we can read whether people like a certain song or whether whether they are happy with an artist. And these are comments that we get from, again, like I said, WeChat, Facebook, Instagram. These are things that we read through and we understand. And of course, when we do this globally, all this comes in different languages, so trying to interpret them becomes a little bit more difficult. But those are the tools that we have.
So, if we try to take the analogy where the data is the new oils, my company, CryoWorks, we don't find oils, we make the tools, we make the oil rigs. So to a certain extent, as you're talking about tools, my experience has been technology is basically just a tool. And I mean, you're in the petroleum industry, the most difficult part is not the oil rig, is to find well to drill. So in the same way, I think when I deal with my customers, which currently is predominantly SMB, the necessity of having a domain ontology or domain knowledge about asking the right questions is sometimes it's not there. So it doesn't really matter what tools that you provide, the technology that you provide, if you do not know what you want to extract and you do not know what's to ask, that whatever technology that you buy will actually be wasted. So I think for us, that is where a lot of companies need to basically figure out, even before they buy the technology, because we are talking about, how do we use a new technology to gather insight, but have they the existing capability, even a traditional way of insight generation. And my experience working in the industry as the tool makers, that skill set, while it's probably available in the MNC, but in the SMB world, it's kind of something that is not easily that companies do have it. Yeah.
So, Darwin, I think you mentioned a very, very important point. In fact, I had this as a fourth point to discuss, but let me advance this a bit, which is essentially around people capabilities. Now, coming from a traditional sort of organization, which is now pivoting towards the new age, we see that getting people onboarded, aligned on the use of data, tools, driving insight-driven discussions can be a bit challenging. And of course, the organization puts in efforts and dollars, but it's also a mindset shift. So could you throw some more light on what sort of people capabilities that CryoWorks is investing in, and sort of what are your thoughts around that?
So generally for us, CryoWorks itself is that we build tools to extract and collect data. All right. So the our primary capabilities are basically when we do a retail automations, we build solutions to figure out who buy what, even the brick and mortar shops. What's the weather when they bought it? What's the temperatures? How's the facial expression, genders, and all those things. But this data on isolations, it means nothing. So we build a bunch of technology to gather all these informations. So because automating insight extraction or insight generation is difficult, I think for Cryo itself, what is our plan ahead is to figure out how are some of this information after collection, at least try to find a common denominators, and we are starting investing, getting people in the data science, machine learning, to help out at least on the SMB people to give some correlations, some certain low-level insights to get them going. But unfortunately, to get a really novel, good insight, there is no way running around than to get someone who understands well about your business models, to understand well your business, to ask the right question. And that is something that, I mean, we can't get into because we sell tools. I mean, why would we know where? I mean, if I'm making an oil rig and Shell come to me asking where should I drill, as like you're asking the wrong person.
Thanks.
From people, right? From culture. I think for Universal Music, from the music industry, we changed from, like I mentioned, from the CD, vinyl, cassette format about 15 years ago. And one of the things happened is that I think for Universal Music Group, we did not make we actually took a hard turn when it became digital. That means we didn't tell ourselves we will become a digital company, we will put in digital tools, we will let our people move into it. We just took a hard turn and said that this is what we are doing, we are implementing all this, those who can adapt will survive, those who cannot will leave the company, and new people will join. So we just took a hard turn. So even today, it exists such that the culture is that we don't consciously tell ourselves we are a digital, because we are a company that runs digital, so we don't tell ourselves we are transforming into one. So it's just so everybody is naturally digital. So we took that hard turn. Those who could not survive that transition just left, and new people just joined. So culturally, that's what it is. But of course, we also have to discipline our people in using tools. I think marketing is easy, sales is easy. For us, the hardest would be the actual music side, because in the old days, to determine whether a song will be a hit, you used to have tastemakers who sit there and listen to a song and say, yeah, this is a good song, it will do well. Okay, it still happens in a way, but now when we record a song, we get a whole bunch of people all over and all the different countries testing the song in different markets, and then listening to how the music jumps in playlists in Spotify in India, in Africa. So we have some of this, and then we watch how the data grows. If the data is strong enough, okay, this is a song that we can bet on, then we transition it to a different level, and then we push a song. If the song doesn't register in these few test countries and it doesn't move, then maybe we will delay the song, or we shelve the song, we do something to it. So I think it has moved from it used to be very subjective. Right now is both. We are combining taste, subjectiveness with this. But of course, once in a while, you get a hit like Despacito, where it comes from nowhere, right? So and then suddenly everybody is singing it for no reason, and we have no data. Actually, we really have no data to show why it will do that well. But it just did. So it's something that is it just took us by surprise, but it's a good thing. So, but we now have a lot of discipline as far as to not only just roll out products based on certain people's tastes. I think that's what a lot of people, certain decision makers, we now use a lot of data at the early stages to test. And if the trend runs well in certain test markets, we then push it further.
So agile. Sort of
It's more agile.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with saying that, to the outside world, Uber is considered in both a transport company to some of the users as well as a digital company, right? and to the more sophisticated, the people who have used it much more often for a long time, they obviously also see it as a digital tech company. Internally, of course, we started as a great startup, a digital startup. So everybody who kind of joined the company at the very beginning, worked on it like you'd see any other startup, right? Where you used data extensively. There was an explosion of data all around. The good thing about what Uber or Airbnb or any of these companies, or Google, all of these companies have a lot of access to their own data. Vis-a-vis, let's say, a Coke or a Pepsi, who know that, through their distribution sales numbers, that yes, a lot of people are buying their products, but unless they do a very extensive usage and attitude study, for example, they may not have that clear an idea about that person, right? So the good thing about, of course, there are pros and cons, but there was a lot of data. And to kind of filter and distill information and insights from data is what has now started to happen. For the longest time, some of the classical theories in the company was around, let's just study our own platform data. How are people traveling? How are people eating? What is the time? What is the quantity? How do we make this person a more frequent rider, etc.? All of these were questions that we could probably get from our own data. But increasingly, what we've started to get people to do is that we've started kind of getting them to orient themselves a little bit more towards the human hand, which is just an empathetic design thinking approach where there is platform data, but there's also a lot of outside-in view that we can get, insights from. So in terms of people, we just need them to be extremely empathetic and data-driven, but at the same time, also be able to distill data, assimilate, and then just get insights from a whole wide array of data, both claimed as well as observed and tacit information. So it's a lot of these things that we look to people to do. Yeah.
Great, which sort of is a good segue to the next point around disruption 3.0, or what. So the question that I have in mind is, what disruption do you see in your customer's organization, which is going to, change the way market research is, it's going to sort of give a new direction to market research. Yeah. So what are those future disruptive trends which you have picked up either from yesterday's sessions, today's session, or your general observations which you could throw some light on?
Should I start?
Yeah.
So just a couple of thoughts here. I'm not sure if it is future or present, but I think we need to continue to harness mobile in a much better way, because obviously, I don't need to say this, mobile is really the extension of our arms, and we spend increasing amounts of time on the mobile. Social media, both as data as well as a platform. When I say as data, whatever gets published on social media, we should be able to harness that. And also leverage social media as a channel where we can conduct, let's say, online focus group discussions, and essentially conduct research, conduct inciting at the place where consumer is, instead of devising a whole new platform or inviting people to come to a place. So I think we need to harness both social media, mobile a little bit better. And the third thing is just, which we still find a little bit difficult to do, is that marrying all data points together, string it up together, and to distill from macro trends to an individual insight is something that we want to continue to do, but and also find new ways of doing that, because we have tons of macro data that there are X number of trips, Y number of people, but as an individual, how do insights actually come together for this one person, and which will obviously also help us in customer relationship management, or more micro personalized messaging, etc. So I think these are some of the areas I think are going to be the future of research and insights. Yeah.
For us, there are now technologically two biggest disruptions. The first one, I think I've heard the questions now. The first one is actually with voice, which is the biggest issue one of the biggest issue we're facing, very basic but fundamental issue. Right now, we spend a lot of investment and time in doing algorithms for playlisting. For those of you who listen, Spotify, there's a playlist, right, that you create, and then or you go to a default playlist because there's a playlist for de-stress or workout or whatever that you subscribe to. So we now spend a lot of time managing playlists, trying to push songs to playlists and brand a playlist or market a playlist instead of just a song. But with voice, it becomes very different for us because when somebody comes home, they don't say play me something playlist. When they come home, they will say that I'm stressed today, play me something to de-stress. You cannot create a playlist for voice activation like that. Or they come home and say today I feel funky, play me funky music. There's no such thing as a funky music playlist. It's somehow there's an algorithm that is like. So for us, we need to figure out how to match the future, because everything in the future will be voice activated for us. Very few of us will be using phones and scrolling through. So, and we are actually trying to move. So that's the biggest disruption. We still haven't figured out how to do that properly yet. So all of us now have bought our own Alexas and HomePods to study how it works. So that's the first thing. The other one that will disrupt us a lot is actually artificial intelligence. Again, if you look at it, what song gets played next automatically is very important because then it determines which artist plays what. So if you're listening to this song, how the algorithm determines which song you want to listen to, that is important to us. So we are studying how that works in every ecosystem like YouTube and Spotify, Apple Music. So artificial intelligence, of course, AI also affects us from a songwriting perspective. I think if you have read, now actually robots can write songs. So they can write and actually produce and sing a song and without human intervention. In the future, when you listen to a pop song, you will not even know whether it's human written or sung or it's just voice and it's just robots creating a song. And it's becoming very weird. But it's something that also we are trying to see how we can match it. So AI is a big thing for us because it affects a whole part of our ecosystem. So these are the two, voice and artificial intelligence.
Okay, for me, what I see future disruptions in the world of retailings is that how the technology of blockchain is coming in place. Okay, the perspective that I see is that because we do have our customers gather information, but a lot of the information is all about the product that they sell. It's a siloed information. Yeah, I mean, if you're Coca-Cola, you know about all the soft drinks that you sell. But people like Facebooks or Amazons or whatever, they have information across different verticals of products, across different verticals of brands. That's why they can do a cross-sellings of, oh, you just bought potato chips, can I recommend you this soft drinks or something like that. So how do we do that when everyone, doesn't necessarily trust one another's data and doesn't, how do you do a distributed data marketplace? And that's where we feel that the futures of insights, the data will be actually traded through blockchain platforms. And this is going to change the industry tremendously because everyone will have their own control of the data, but yet able to trade with one another. And everything, if this blockchains has become popular in the futures, this is going to be something. Think about it: the data that Amazon have, but distributed. So, we are moving towards the directions, figuring out how to every single retail endpoints are able to actually works in the blockchain's world.
Thanks. My last point was really around the customer experience journey. I think, Kenny, you mentioned a very good point around attribution, which is essentially, if I read it, is around getting customer advocates who advocate your brand. In Shell, we have a net promoter score methodology by which we try and galvanize more of advocates. So my question was, how are you using the sort of insights from all this feedback which comes in, let's say in Uber, to sort of tweak your customer experience journey, both for the driver as well as for the rider? Can you throw some examples? Or
So I'm not sure if I answered this question. I mean, if I got the question correctly, but
so from all the data that comes in, from net promoter scores or whatever mechanism you have, how much of emphasis and what sort of strategies do you deploy to tweak the experience, the journey, both for the driver as well as for the rider?
Sure. Let's start with the driver first. I mean, because it's simpler. I mean, we try to get data from drivers, but because of a lot of technical, methodological, or linguistic challenges, it's not always the case that we get very, very clean data. So we also almost sanitize it all the time. But what we do get is, of course, we deploy these one-question surveys to our drivers, so they're able to kind of, and also like keep it really simple.
Simple, yeah.
So whatever data we get from that, I mean, in terms of actionability, that is immediate. Because, for example, if we get something on the marketplace for drivers, driver earnings, etc., we're able to kind of, distribute that insight to the marketplace, to the operations, to strategy and planning teams, etc., and then get that actioned upon almost immediately. Of course, that's subject to the other marketplace conditions also, because somebody mentioned yesterday that 80 variables go into, and I wasn't honestly aware of that. Somebody mentioned that 80 variables go into the matching logic or the pricing logic for Uber. So I mean, it would be like, yes, we get the insight, but of course they have to kind of figure out from a lot of different things if something can be actioned immediately. But in terms of in terms of from the journey that insight makes to action, I think Uber is one place where that happens. It's not purely an academic exercise or theoretical to kind of, it takes a long time to kind of turn an insight around. For riders, again, I would just, like, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think there's a lot of data that comes in. In terms of customer lifecycle management, what we have started to do is that we've tried to identify our riders as, not just in terms of frequency of usage, etc., but also in terms of advocacy and attribution, right? So there's a group of riders, and I'm sure there are a lot of them amongst us also, who kind of swear by Uber. Yeah. And even though it's a highly commoditized, the amount of fair comparison, price comparison that happens in this category is immense. And I've heard from some of you also that ever since Uber had to go from Singapore, it's unfortunate Grab has started to charge us quite enormously, etc. Despite that, the number of people who actually would like to fight for Uber is actually quite a lot. And so we're able to identify these people, and there are different data points for that, and therefore create solutions that can commit more and more loyalty from them and to them. Yeah. So that's one cohort that we look at a lot. And then there's another group of people who we always try to kind of push towards more and more usage so that it becomes a default habit. So just that journey from the paradigm shift from choice to habit is what I spoke about yesterday also, I think, is just constantly a filter that we apply everywhere. How do we make it a choice, a habit from choice, and across customer life cycle? So yeah.
Very interesting. Thanks.
For us, I think two things. One is that we place our artists and our songs into and the listeners into buckets. For example, we have one bucket where people don't know about the artist or the song. So this is an awareness issue, because at any one time there are so many millions of songs, or every week there are thousands of songs uploaded. So the question is, how do you get people to be aware that the song came out in the first place? So we have things to move to get that done. Then we also have another bucket of fans or customers that are what we call swing. That means they can either listen to or not. It's okay. So we try to get them to have changed their preference to be more. towards our artists and our singers. And then the third, of course, trying to change from regular listeners to become fans. So we have the technology to, without going into details, to move this along. And of course, using, again, social media tools and in-platform technology, for example, YouTube videos and all this. So, for example, if you're watching one YouTube video, how do we tweak our YouTube video so that the next one that you watch is ours? So we do a lot of things with that from a technology standpoint. So that's one. The other thing from a customer experience standpoint is that for us, we have this coordinated global flooding strategy, which is, if you notice that when Shawn Mendes has a new song, right? So we have this thing is coordinated globally, where we are all given way in advance tools, assets. So that if there's a new single from Shawn Mendes, all 60 countries that we're operating in, all kinds of languages, are given a certain time and date, and all of us push out the same content and flood the market at the same time in 60 different languages, but using the same asset. So we do that coordinated push. So it's like a global warfare kind of thing. So we actually do it at the same time, and we're all coordinated. It's like, and all different time zones. So it's all connected. But we do. That's why when there's a new song comes out from us, more people are aware, because a lot of people will start talking. Oh, this song, everybody is listening to it. It must be good. But actually, many times it's just a coordinated marketing push that we do at any one time. So our teams are all coordinated to do that. So that's how we move some of these customer segments along.
Excellent.
So for us, I mean, because we are more the B2B, okay, so we build more tools for our clients to ensure that they are able to turn some of their customers into loyal customers. So we build, for example, a solution to figure out who is the highest purchasers, the patterns of their purchase, and giving a very highly customized discount or offerings up to the individual's levels. So, for example, just one example is that one of our clients in the F&B industry, they have ready-to-eat meals that sells through our machines in corporate pantries. So last year during the month of Ramadan, there is fasting month. You know, the Muslim fast, and then they break the fast after the sunset, about probably 6:30. So what we do is that we create a tailored program for them. Say that, okay, if there is someone of your customers still in the office during the breaking of the fast, and the name match possibly a Muslim's names, we push them, we help them to push offers just for these people, so that they at least can have a discounted meals on the corporate pantries, ready-to-eat meals for the halal meals. So, and that actually helps them a lot in terms of gaining so-called favors, or gaining so-called loyalties from this group of clients. So we combine, we bring out tools of localizations, of machine learning to detect names, and a variety of other tools for our clients. So that's what we do, and there are many ways of doing this to bring your customers to be turning them from customers to a fan. But the question is that, whether you want to use the tools.
Thank you so much. Great insights. Opening this session now to the audience. Any questions?
Well, I can maybe start us off with a question. And this would be for either of our two brands up here. So just coming out of your discussion, obviously it takes a lot of different technologies and a lot of different skill sets if you want to stay competitive, whether it's from a customer experience perspective or if it's from a marketing perspective. How do you prioritize your big investments, and how do you get management support? Because obviously a lot goes into it.
So I'll take that first. I'll just say this again, that I think everything is a business decision. So between two marketing priorities or between two customer experience priorities, the one that would win will be the one that makes more business sense, more economic sense for the company. That said, I don't think we will take decisions which are not empathetic, which are not people driven. But everything else being equal, I think the one decision that is more business oriented is what is going to win. I'll just give you a very small example. Even when we're testing two ideas out, I spoke about pre-testing quite a lot yesterday, but when we test two ideas out, one may be around getting more loyalty from the rider. The other one could be around getting more riders. Between that, we do a full-scale, market sizing of that opportunity, and then in tandem with decisions of management, etc., we figure out what is a better decision, and then we go with that. So it's ultimately a business decision. Yeah.
For us, most of, if I use Universal, it's a bit unfair because a lot of our decisions in terms of investment and technology is coming from global, from HQ. So it's a global rollout. Certain territories like Asia, we do have certain tools that we create because of the need here. I give an example. In this part of the world, signing artists is one of the things that is very complicated, and because it's very fragmented, so the artists all tends to do their own thing. So we have just recently created a tool to do online artist recruitment. That means I don't need to go with a pen and paper to go to an artist to sign. So now I have a platform that I'm rolling out throughout Indochina that the artist can just click an agreement online and vote their song, and they become a universal artist. So we can do global mass signing of artists. So that is something that we've built specifically for this part of the world, not for US or Europe. So those are the things that we know that if it's, again, business decision is what we will do. But I guess in a more general case, for those of us that don't have the kind of investment power or the kind of budget, again, I would say that based on what I've spoken just now, understand your business model and then invest appropriately. That means just don't follow the crowd. Again, if your company is product based, high margin, focus on those things that make your business model work. Because if your company, example, is product based, then concentrate on things like design. How do you do network design? That means getting technology that will give you new designs of your product regularly. Because when you're a product-driven company, that's what people want. It's not about price. So, and then how do you have technology that keeps your stock in limited range? So even if it runs out, let it run out because people will still buy anyway. So, so those are the kind of things that if you know your business model, I think then you can save a lot of money not investing in so many different things. So if you are on the cost side, like I said, if your product is trying to go compete on price, then yes, spend all your money and technology on monitoring prices, making things more convenient, door-to-door delivery, online, one button push. So that is a thing that you would invest on. So different companies, different models. If you can understand where your company is coming from in terms of your business model, then investing in this will make more sense.
For us, because it's B2B, a lot of our concentrations basically is customized to a particular clients. So just like your talk just now is probably like the Ramly burgers. So the way that we do is that we keep innovating, and so that every vertical of customers coming to us will just say that, okay, let's see what's the problem that you face, and then whether it makes sense for the investments. Because oftentimes I say that you don't chase automation for the sake of automations, and I would like to make the sales, but if it doesn't really make sense for your business, at the end of the day, is that we don't want to be a technology deployed for a failure story. We want to be a success story.
Any other questions?
With that, I think we get to have a break now. So thank you very much. Big round of applause for our panel. Fantastic.
Awesome.